I have my video off.
Good morning, good morning. Welcome to those joining. Nice to see you here. We're just opening up a few minutes early like we normally do, let everyone get settled in before we kick off with our webinar today. Lots of people here already, good to see. Scrolling through familiar names. Hi there, Mark, how are you? Hi, Ricky. Hi, Siri. And Alice. Hazana, hello. And Rose. I got down, oh my God, sorry, my Tagalog is bad. Hi, Daniel. Hi, Roberto. Hi, Ake, how are you? Tatiana. Thank you, Mark. Nice to see you here too. So we'll start at the top of the hour, which is 10 a.m. Singapore time. Should be 9 a.m. Vietnamese time or 11 a.m. Japan time, depending on where you are. Hi there, Tran, Ho Chi Minh. You're more than welcome, Mark. I hope you enjoy it. Hi, Yosef. In Jakarta, Jenlyn from the Philippines. Tatiana's in Thailand. Oh, they're coming in thick and fast now. Shirley in Thailand. Wayne in the Philippines. Chunshi, hello Chunshi. Juvi from Thailand, nice to see you. Amu, hello from Saigon. So yeah, welcome aboard everybody. Nice to see you here today. I'm just making sure things are set up and we'll start in about 5 minutes. I'll do the housekeeping in 2 or 3 minutes and then we'll go. So hope you find today's lesson interesting. It's kind of relevant to the topic a little bit, I think, to what we have to do these days in a newer learning environment a little bit, right? Tech, interest, high tech, low tech, high interest, low interest, lots of different ways we can learn, right? So we'll see what we can pick up today. And one thing I like about this program, this is an English language learning program we're looking at today, but actually some of the ideas in it are very relevant for us as teachers too, which is why I chose this particular unit to take a look at today. Hi there, Ivy. Nice to see you again. So we've got about 60 people here at the moment. I know there'll be a few more on the way. Hi, Shirley. Ruthel, hello. Biliran province in the Philippines, nice. Hi, Roberto. Idols. That's a bit of a high expectation, I think. Good fun. Hi, Marie. Well, it's good, Chunchi, that I can say your name well. I can actually speak some Chinese, not a whole lot, but I can. So I have a Chinese name too. My Chinese name is Liu Anzu. Andrew, similar to Andrew, of course. Liu is my wife's family name. So I took her family name on our household register. So I'm officially a Liu when I'm in Asia. Very good. Chunshi, I hope you're doing okay with, I know coronavirus is rearing its head in lots of places in China at the moment. So I hope you're not badly locked down there where you are, wherever you are. And I hope everyone else is being safe too. Blanquita, hello. Are you in Jilin? Okay. Yeah, stay safe up there, okay? Very cool. Hi, Greta. How are you? Hi, Monrudi. Nick, hello. Nick from Kunming. My wife's father was from Kunming, actually. And he's still got some relatives there in Kunming. Sebeniso, hello again, all the way from Tajikistan. Nice to see you. We really enjoy having you here. Very good. So what I might do is let me run through the housekeeping. Before I do that, I'm just going to go live on Facebook. Let me just set that up really quickly. Just take me 1 minute to do this. And then we can get going. That one there, go live. Okay. Got it. There we go. Okay. So good morning, everybody. Welcome, welcome. Let's just run through the housekeeping really quickly. Hi, Thui. Nice to see you. So for today, please do use the chat box. Just make sure your settings in the chat box are set to everyone or all panelists and attendees in the Zoom chat. Obviously, if you're watching on Facebook Live, you can interact with us that way. I'm sorry, but do enjoy as we go through today. Hi, Zaneda. And we will use the Q&A function today. Please do use that to put in questions or comments as you go that you want us to maybe refer back to later. If you use the chat box, the messages disappear quite quickly. But if you use the Q&A box, then we can see your question later, and then we'll be able to address it. We'll try and leave a few minutes for questions at the end of the webinar today. Okay, so for those of you who don't know me, my name is Andrew. I'm a senior academic consultant at National Geographic Learning. I'm sitting in Taipei at the moment, but actually next week, I actually move. I'm moving back to my home, which is in New Zealand. So I'm hopefully on a plane in a week, as long as I pass the COVID test to get on the plane. So that'll be interesting. Yeah, to learn a little bit about you and what you're up to, let's open a quick poll and see what we're doing here. So please, if you're in Zoom, please tick one or more of the segments that you teach. I'm interested to see what everybody here is doing. So take a quick look here. Very good. I'll give it another 5 or 6 seconds. 3, 2, 1. Okay, that looks pretty good. Okay, so just quickly to share. So we can see here, a lot of us are teaching young learners or teens. The program we're working with today is an academic program. And so it's usually used by teens or university students, okay, or young adults, right? So for those of you teaching teens, you may see materials like this, depending on your types of students and the program you do. And for those of you teaching university students or adults, this kind of program should fit for your kind of students too. The reason it won't work so well with younger learners is just because of the kind of the depth of the vocabulary and the kind of the content ideas. And you'll see that as we go through today. Okay, so we'll stop sharing those and we'll go on. So what we're looking at today in our webinar is we're going to be talking about the topic of high-tech versus high-interest learning. First question you might wonder is there really a versus in that? But you can see the unit title here. It says low-tech learning, and we're going to talk a little bit about that today. But as I said, this program is an academic English program that we're looking at today. It has listening and speaking strands and reading and writing strands. We're going to work with the reading and writing material today. And the content is designed to be very relatable. It's designed to be very much about things students would have experienced, no matter which part of the world they're in. But it's also developing their academic vocabulary, their academic reading and writing skills, expressed in an academic setting, so school or university. And using those the right kinds of language to do that, okay? And you'll see examples as we go along today, okay? You might also notice as we go through, it has a very clear instructional framework. It's very step-by-step scaffolded as we go through. So we'll see all the different pieces of that today as we go through, okay? So let me shift over to our classroom presentation tool and we'll get going. So I'll be the teacher, you can be the students. I know the only way you can really interact with me is through the chat box, but I will be asking lots of questions today. So do feel free to jump in. Oh, sorry, I hit the wrong button there. There we go. Well, do feel free to jump in and comment as we go. Okay, so anyway, on the screen here, pretty obviously, I think we can read the caption, right? But what's going on in this picture? What's happening here? In the chat box, let me know. What's happening in the picture here? So pretty obviously they're doing a science experiment, right? Yeah, experimenting. It's in a school lab. You can see from the caption, it's in a classroom in a school. Did you do this kind of thing when you were in school? Is this something you did when you were in high school? You did experiments like this? Yeah. Did some of you at your schools maybe not have this kind of equipment at your school to do these kinds of experiments? Anyone in that situation? Yeah, so like Brian is saying, yes, we did, but not a lot. Yeah, okay. Most of us are saying yes. Okay, yeah, it is a chemistry experiment. They're measuring temperature. It looks like they're measuring something to do maybe solubility or something. I'm not sure, right? But yeah, they're measuring some different things here, and it's very hands-on, right? And if we look at the questions at the bottom of the page here, we've got a couple of questions. So it says, how are the students in the photo learning? So if you had to use some words to describe how they're learning, what would you say? What's the way that they're learning? Learning by doing, says Abora. Yeah, they're engaging, says Galam, right? Yeah. They're learning by observation, says Mark. Yeah. You know, doing experiments, kinesthetic learning. Yeah. Hands-on, experiential learning. Yeah. Measuring. Yep. Yeah. So these are all the kinds of phrases that we often talk about for this kind of learning, right? And then number two, now this one's interesting. Here it says, what are some effective ways to learn something new? What are some effective ways to learn something new? So if I said to you, for example, you bought a new piece of technology, maybe not a phone, because a phone's pretty common these days, but you bought something new. Maybe it's you bought a 3D printer, or you bought a new computer attachment. Maybe it's some sort of fancy digital camera for doing webcasting or something, right? What are the different ways you might learn to use that piece of technology, for example? What might you do? So some of you exploring, maybe, okay? Siri says watching an instructional or demo video or listening to it, reading reviews about it. Yeah, we could do, right? What else? Use Google, says Marianne. Yeah, sure. Practice, says Daniel. Yeah, thing with practice was something that's a expensive piece of technology. You might feel a little reticent about actually getting in there and practicing without knowing what you're doing. Yeah. Mary Jane says she'd look at the manual. Yeah. Galarm says do some simulations with it. Okay. Yeah. Trial and error. Yeah, sure. Cool. There we go. Wayne's got another one. By asking someone else to teach me how to use it, right? So following the example of a teacher or a peer, right? Or a subject matter expert. Yeah, cool. Yeah, interacting with other people. Yeah, so there's lots of different ways that we can learn, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be, as we may experience, sitting in a classroom listening to a teacher, right? It doesn't have to be that style, right? We have so many different ways to learn. And someone here said, I can't pronounce your name, excuse me, Chungiz, is that? I'm not sure. I like to disassemble and assemble it back together so I can figure out how it works and then put it back together again. Yeah, I know some people who like to do that as well. So it's a nice way to experience or try to work with some of these sorts of things. Yeah, so it's interesting, right? There are lots of different ways of learning. So in this unit, what are we going to look at? We're going to look at how technology works for younger learners, right, in terms of learning. And we're also going to talk about your education, especially what you experienced in your schooling when you were younger. Now, just if we take a pause for a second and we think, for students who are maybe doing this, if they're university level students, then they can talk about their elementary school and high school. If the students are in high school studying this topic, they can talk about what they did in elementary school, okay? So it's relating these ideas to your education, okay? We're going to think about technology and how that gets used, and that's very relevant today, in today's situation that we're all in. tech learning tips, and then writing an essay about ed tech. Now, actually, of these 5, we're really going to focus on the first 2, okay, and the last one, okay? The reason we're skipping these 2 is we can't get through the whole unit, right, in a short amount of time. So we're just going to skip over a couple of pieces in the middle, okay? Now, the skills that we're going to work on, distinguishing between facts and opinions. We'll talk about that later. How to write paragraphs. Okay, we're going to be talking about adverbs of contrast and evaluating the practicality of advice. Does it work for you, right? Okay, so here, even within this, you can see there's a lot of academic ideas here, like distinguish, right? Or evaluate. These are very kind of academic style words, right? School kind of words. So you can see the nature of this kind of program, right? Okay, so let's take a look at the first section we're going to do. And this first section is actually a video, but we're not going to watch the video straight away. If you look at this photo, I'm hiding the caption momentarily. What do you see is going on in the photo here? What do you think is happening? Or what's happening? Where is this? Who are they? What else do you think might be happening here? Any ideas of what we can discern from the picture? Kids looking for frogs or turtles? Maybe. Okay. I'll show you that much so you can see a little bit more of the picture down here. Biology class, maybe. Okay, explaining or showing something. Hosanna, observing something in the pond. Yeah, that's a pretty good bet, Ming-san. Showing the kids how things work. Yeah. Aquatic life, frogs, something in the pond. Yeah, okay. So we could be doing a lot of different things here. If I go down and we look at the caption a little bit more, she's training, the teacher here, Maritza, is training children to take care of the environment. Okay. In Tesoco Nuevo, Yucatan, Mexico, right? So yeah, so here they're looking at what's going on in this pond or this pool, and they're being instructed about something. Maybe it's to do with the plants. She's holding something in her hand. I'm not sure what that is. Is that a water snail or something? I'm not sure, right? Could be. Doesn't particularly matter. But if you think about this, if they're being trained or learning in this setting, do you think this is a school day? Not a school day? Are they at school? Is this after school? What do you think? What do you think the setting here is? Or the time? Maybe after school? Okay. No uniforms. Not every school student wears uniforms. Okay, but yeah, sure. Summer vacation? Maybe. Yeah, sure. Field trip? Yeah, it could be a field trip, right? Yeah, so there's a lot of different, we're not really clear about that, right? Okay, but by thinking about what we can see here, we can still try to infer some things, especially if we're given a couple of hints, right? And so if we look at the activity, what it says down here is it says, watch the video and then complete the statements. But I think we're smart. I think we can try and complete the statements before we watch the video. Okay, so if we look at the statements down here, there are 6. Okay, so if we think about what might be going on here, we've got the topic of low-tech learning. We've got she's training children to care for the environment. Yeah, okay. So if we look at what we've got here, if we look at question 1 or statement 1, Morales says her job is to teach children to do what? Yeah, teach others, I think, right? As Juvie says and Shungas says, right? Yeah, I think it's teach others, right? Cool. What about the second one here? She wants them to learn how to protect the earth or grow food. Protect the earth. Now, why do you think it's protect the earth? What's your reason, right? Academic skill, right? You should always have a reason for saying what you think. Why do you think it's protect the earth? What might lead you to think that? So if we look at this one, grow, yeah. So up here in the caption, it said to care for the environment, right? So yeah, that's protecting the earth. That's not so much growing food, right? It's more closely tied to protecting the earth. Exactly. So this is, again, it's like use your evidence to support your opinions or your answers, right? Yeah. Okay, number 3, her classroom is Outdoors, exactly. Good job. Nice. Okay, number 4. Her students learn about trees by, what do you think? Now, why do you think it's planting seeds? Why do you think it's planting seeds? So this is an inference question, right? Because there is no exact evidence, but we're inferring, right? Yeah, because they're outside. You don't usually have video players and recorders and screens outside, right? They're outdoors. This seems like an outdoorsy kind of thing. And so planting seeds would fit with that, right? So again, we can have our students like put these ideas together, right? Okay, the classroom has or doesn't have chairs and tables? Doesn't have, okay. And she uses her own games or computer games in the classroom? Her own games, nice. Okay, so Kitty ticked all the green arrows there for us. Thank you, Kitty. But yeah, so here we're getting an idea about this before we even watch the video, right? We think we know what's going on and we can confirm that in a second. Now, activity B down here, it says, write your answers to the questions. Now, we haven't seen the video yet, but I'm still going to try this first, right? So why do you think this lady likes her job or loves her job? What are some reasons you think maybe she loves her job? Up here, she's not smiling, but she seems pretty interested. Seems like she's hanging out with the kids, as it were. Why do you think she loves her job? Any reasons? She loves teaching kids. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, she loves the environment. Yeah. Or she's an environmentalist. True. Yeah. She gets to do what she loves and share it with kids, says Wayne. Nice. She's passionate about it. She loves nature, says Farzana. Yeah. So if we look up here, she's a National Geographic explorer. Now, what that means is a National Geographic explorer is a person funded by the National Geographic Society to engage in education, research, and other sorts of activities that help us learn better ways to do things on our planet, right? To look after the environment, to work with people, to understand cultures, to resolve conflicts, to do all these kinds of things, right? So yeah, so her teaching is her explorer function here, right? And then number 2, why do you think children might like being in her classroom? Why do you think they might like that? Or do you think you'd like it if you were in her classroom? Learn by doing? Yeah, a lot of people like to learn by doing, right? They like getting hands-on, exactly. Yep. It's not a normal classroom setting, says Daniel. Yeah. And sometimes just changing is as good as a holiday, as they say, right? It's a real life activity, says Chingas. Yeah. Outdoors always fun, says Cherry, unless it's raining. All right. Okay. Yeah. The classroom is their world, Galam. I like that. Nice. Yeah, they can use senses in an authentic context. I think that was Mark, right? Nice. It's informal. They're not restricted. Yeah, they can see real things while learning. Yeah. So yeah, this is a much more engaging way of doing things. We talk at National Geographic Learning about using authentic content, right? It doesn't get much more authentic than sticking your hand in the pool of water and playing with the water plants or whatever it might be, right? That's super authentic, right? So yeah, so these are some good reasons to do this, right? Now let's take a quick look at the video. The video is not too long, so we'll watch the whole thing. But take a look and see what you think. I'm going to keep it small like this just because it streams better that way. But take a look and see what you think about what you see.
Imagine that you're a child, you are 10 years old, and environment is a word that nobody understands. My job is to train the next explorers of Grandmother Earth to be teachers, to be environmental instructors. That's why I wanted to create a special place to have fun and learn. So imagine, Save Up and Tundra is more like a theme park when you can find all the methodologies and all the tools that you need to be an environmentalist. How can a big tree stay inside a little seed? When you listen about global warming, how can you understand what that means? Sounds difficult. In our classrooms, there are no birds, no chairs, and no tables. So my job is to create games with children and understand how can we protect nature and environment. When a child decides to be the hero of Grandmother Earth, he spends all the weekends of 1 year learning about water, biodiversity, planting, and then he gets accreditation like an environmental instructor. Because I feel that children are the best teachers in the world. I feel that I'm not working. I feel that I'm just doing what I really love. What I really want to do is to give a support for that children who are going to be the future, but they need to take action now.
Very cool. There we go. So now I have a question, obviously, as we're going through and listening to that. How many of you found it a little hard to understand what she was saying? Did you find it difficult because of maybe her accent to understand what she was saying there? Not really. I think it's different for everybody. So some people, yes, some people, no. What I often do with my students, if I'm doing this kind of activities, I let them listen to it just like that first. But then if I want to, I can also turn the captions on. So then what we could do is we could watch it with captions as well so that they can read along with it. But I'd rather them not do that the first time, especially I want them to try and listen to see what they hear. Now, there was one point, maybe you heard it, maybe you didn't. How often do these students come to her learning center, to her school, if you want to call it that? Did you hear how often they come?
No.
Did anyone hear? She did mention it. It was mentioned in one sentence. So if we wanted to, we could go back and try and find that, right? And we won't do that right now. She said that those children come every weekend for an entire year, right? So maybe it's a school year. Let's say it's 40 weeks. So that 40 weekends, they're going to that center and they're learning how to do those different things in the environmental classroom, as it were, right? So yeah, that it is an after-school thing. It's on the weekends, but they're doing it a lot, right? They're doing it maybe for like 40 weeks out of the year, and then they graduate and get a certification from her, right? So this is really interesting, right? About what they're doing. You could see the way the kids are interacting. I know in some places, maybe have you learned hands-on like that? Did you have a school garden? We could talk about these things with our class, right? Anyway, but let's move on because we're already 20 minutes in. And let's take a look at when we're doing some of this. Obviously, we're introducing the topic with the video, but then what we want to look at next is we want to get into some reading, right? Because this strand is mainly about reading and writing. So if I zoom out, actually, let me just zoom out a second. We've got vocab leading into reading, and then we've got post-reading activities, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to set up our reading by looking at vocabulary. Now, sometimes we say to you, as we're doing these webinars, we say, I'm sure you know how to teach vocabulary, but actually maybe you're looking for some ideas to teach vocabulary. So I'm going to treat you like my students, and I'm going to teach you some of these vocabulary words just like I do with my students who are doing this kind of program, okay? So we've got our first word up here. So can anyone say that word? Right, and obviously someone would say it, we get the pronunciation down, right? So this word is access, okay? And what type of word is it? It's a noun, okay? Now, in my class, I would say, who knows this word? Who knows what this word is and what it means? Raise your hand, okay? Find out if anyone does. So I'm sure one of you at least knows what the word access means. So if you know what the word access means, can you give me a sentence using the word access? Okay, so in the chat box, and obviously in my class, this would be oral, and maybe I write it on the board, okay? But can anyone give me a sentence with the word access? We have good access to water, okay? Right? There wasn't access to the fortress. Okay, I've got access to Wi-Fi. Nice, okay. Now, one thing I'm just checking here is that are you using the noun form of access and not the verb form? Because obviously those are different, right? So if I say, I can access Wi-Fi, that's different, right? Okay, cool. So yeah, good. I gave her the access to my email account. Nice. Okay, so from those examples, we can see, okay, we're getting an idea of what this word means. And for those who already know it, great. And for those who don't know it, they can use these examples as hooks to build an understanding of the word, okay? And this is one way we can go through it. Okay, let's take a look at the next one. So the next one down here is acquire. Acquire. So again, who knows, who can say this word? I won't say it first. Who can say it? Great. Okay, give me a sentence with acquire. If you know what it is, if you know what the word acquire means, so Blanquita says get, okay. That's a fairly close synonym, but what's a sentence using the word acquire? I would like to acquire my diploma as soon as possible. Nice. I acquire skills through experience. Kids acquire knowledge by applying. I acquired new skills, past tense, right? Because it's a verb. So it can be a tensed word, right? Yeah, obtain is another one, right? Good. It is hard to acquire a driver's license. I acquired my traits from my parents. Nice. So again, giving lots of example sentences like this, students start to get an idea of what the word means. Okay, do one more, or do two more actually. Let's do development. Development. So again, I'd try to get someone to say it before I do. And then, okay, who knows what it means? Let's have some sentences with development. Development. Many people acquired COVID-19. Yeah, not in a good way, right? Okay, I love child development. Okay, cool. This is Alicia, nice one. What else about development? I want to build a development. Now that one's different, right? So child's development, I want to build a development. That sounds like a building, right? Okay. With the rapid development of scientific technology, good. Students' development is the aim of education institution, nice. Development is a part of life, nice. We find a way for sustainable development, childhood development is parents first, then teachers, nice, right? So yeah, so there's lots of different ways we can use the word development, right? And yeah, most of you are talking about education-related development, like building and growing, right? Yeah, exactly. Okay, nice, cool. And then the last one down here that we'll do today is former. Former. So again, who can give us a sentence, excuse me, with former? So essentially what I'm doing as we do this is I'm using my students as peer teachers, right? The ones who know are providing ideas and answers to the ones who don't know, and then together we start to understand it. And as my students are giving me these, like I met my former students, I was a former student at the school, but not anymore. He was our former president. Or maybe for that one, Wayne, we might even say, for example, if we're talking about the US, we could say Donald Trump is the former president of the United States, right? And then with a particular example that the students can attach the meaning of the word a little more clearly, right? Former President Obama visited my school, nice. He's a former principal, nice. My former work, etc., right? Yeah. So, oh, your former friend is now the exec of Bitcoin. Do you get free ones? Okay. So, yeah. So by using this method, we can get our students to give sentences that they probably will all relate to because they're all of similar ages and levels and so on, that the students who don't know what these words are can start to attach meaning to these words. And if none of my students really know a word, that's fine. Then I can provide the examples. But I much prefer my students to try and provide these examples first, right? I try and let my students speak first. And then if there's gaps, then I'll fill in the gaps. Okay. Sometimes we might also do this in groups. Okay. So what we might do is maybe we say we do these 4 and then I say, okay, the last 6, get into groups of 4. Okay. And together make up some sentences and talk about the pronunciation of these words. And then we'll check the results afterwards and make it a bit more student-centered. Okay. But the objective here is to get everybody using the words, a little bit more familiar with the words in contexts or sentences that they know. Okay. And then after that, we can run through and do the basic vocab activity, right, to match the word with the definition. And it says here, use a dictionary if necessary. In classes, like I'd let my students use their cell phones because no one carries a dictionary these days. They use dictionary.com or whatever. So let's quickly go through and do this. So number 1, growth. Which one would growth be? What do you think? Growth would be development. Okay, cool. The ability to do something. The ability to do something. Physical. I'm not sure if it's physical because it's the ability. That means it's a noun, right? This is an adjective, so I don't think that works. Access, maybe. Okay, because it's a noun, that kind of fits. Maybe relating to the body. Relating to the body. I think that one might be physical, right? And so on. And we can go down and check them all. And I'll just tick all the answers just so we can see what we've got here. There we go. So actually, the ability to do something actually was performance. So access was the ability or right to use something. Okay. So we didn't get that one right. Okay. So, but we can go down the list and check them all off, right? Okay. So what, in that sense, what we're doing is, if I close this, what I'm doing is I'm using, in the first part here, I'm using my students' own knowledge and maybe a group activity and maybe me filling in the gaps to do most of the teaching of the vocabulary and the learning of the vocabulary. And then this little activity here becomes a little bit more of a formative assessment, okay? So I can check to see whether my students are on the right track, okay, with these words. And again, they can use their dictionaries to help them or their online tools, okay? Great. Okay, now down here, we've got some discussion questions. Now, because this, again, this strand is a reading and writing focused strand, you can see from the first activities over here, and then this one here, I'm trying to get my students to speak a lot more as well. When we get into a discussion question, sometimes I need to support them a little bit more. And so what I might do, if I switch to here, is I might put the questions up on the board, something like this, and might give my students a language frame or a sentence starter to help them start to talk about these ideas, especially if I want to focus on academic words or academic forms, right, that they may use later in writing or something like that, okay? So for example, number one here, it says, what are some obvious differences? Oops, it's really fat. What are some obvious differences between elementary and high schools? Okay, so I might give my students a starter, right? So maybe it's something as simple as saying, if I use shorthand, so elementary schools have blah, 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 and high schools don't. That would be a super basic language frame for them to use, right? Another one could be, it could be I can or you can if it's general, right? You can blah, blah, blah at elementary school, but not at high school, or vice versa, right? Okay, so I might use some sort of sentence starters or language frames like this to give my students some assistance in being able to say some different things. And I find often once they get started, they can just carry on and talk a little bit more. Okay, so let's have a think about this. You can help me. And again, I might ask my students, again, for those students who maybe need a little help, who can suggest some language frames we can use for number two. So for number two, what kind of language frame could we use for question two here? What kind of physical activities did you do in elementary school? What's the language frame we would use? So if you want to write gaps, you can just leave spaces or use the underline, okay? So it could be something as simple as saying the kinds of physical activities I did in elementary school, elementary school were ... right? Something like this, right? As Chunga said, you could just say, I could blah, blah, blah at elementary school. That works as well. I could blah, blah, blah at elementary school, for example. So Kitty says, in elementary school students can, that's another one, right? Okay, so we're getting some basic language frames up here. We're not actually giving the answers to the questions, but we're talking about the way we structure the answers or our discussion comments. Okay, and then we could do the same thing for the last one. How could you improve your performance in school tests? So in school tests, comma, I could improve my performance by ... right? Okay, so yeah, so we can give our students some frames, and then once we've given them the frames, we can say, okay, great, now you've got your first kind of sentences that you can say, go and have a chat with a partner. So I've given them a little bit of scaffolding to help them into the activity, okay? So now in the chat box, let's do the third one. So how could you improve your performance on school tests? What do you think are some of the things we could say if, let's say, we're doing it as a group discussion, right? Okay, so how could you improve your performance on school tests? This one down here. What could you do? So now we're not doing the language frame, we're actually giving an answer, right? So for example, I would say, I could write study notes and read them every day, for example, right? So Juvie says, I will study and read more. Tran says, I don't remember. Okay. Chunga says we could do lots of practice tests. Yeah, test prep, right? Okay. Can study in the school library, says Tui Pham. Yeah. Cool. People can improve their performance on school tests by studying more, by doing my homework, says Robert. Yeah. I could polish my strategies to get a higher score, says Rika. I could have a study group, says Blankita. Yeah, we could learn together with other people, right? And Gulam says, yeah, we need to maybe manage our time more effectively to be able to improve my performance, right? That's maybe in the test, managing your time, or maybe managing your study time more effectively as well. Yeah, so, and again, now we're getting into the discussion points and we can talk more about these things. So maybe for this particular question, we could even do some sort of survey, right? We could say maybe, is it about study? Is it about homework? Is it about a study group? We get a group of people together and maybe we can get some tallies going on and we can say, okay, so this is how our class does it. And maybe these are the students with the highest grades and this is what they do. Could we do that as well? I don't know, right? We could maybe actually do some, rather than just English learning, we could actually be learning how to do better on tests by thinking about this as well. Okay. Cool. So it gives us plenty to think about and plenty to play with here. Okay. Nice one. Okay. Now, what I'm going to do is let's share back to here. Okay. And we're running through time really, really rapidly here. There is an activity at the bottom, down the bottom here, which is a reflect activity. And this one says assessing technology for younger learners, right? This one's more about thinking back to when you were a young learner, when you were in elementary school, how did you learn? What worked for you? What do you think is really important? And giving your opinion on this idea. So reflecting back on other parts of your life to have points of discussion. But we're going to skip over that. Excuse me. Sorry, that's my phone going. Okay, right. So we're going to skip over that and look at the reading here. And you can see what sort of learning do you think they're doing here? What sort of learning do you think they're doing? So this looks like hands-on learning, right? Here it says low-tech, high-play schools, right? And if we look here, we've got some words that are going to pop up in the article. Development is one we've already seen. And we're getting the idea of what these words are, and we're kind of filling in the blanks just to make sure we know some words before we start, okay? Long, we'll talk about the textbook later on, okay? So let's just jump in. I just want to look at the reading itself. And what I'm going to do is we're going to talk a little bit about the main ideas as we go through here and some of the supporting evidence, right? So we'll do this really, really quickly. So if you read the first paragraph, you can read it by yourself. Just read paragraph 1, okay? And if I said to you, as you read through that, if I said, what is the main point or the idea of the first paragraph? Now, typically, the idea of the first paragraph is the thesis statement, right? In a piece of reading like this. This is an article or an essay. Usually it's the thesis statement, right? So what's the main idea here? If we had to analyze this and say, what's the main idea? What do we think it is? Any ideas? What do we think this one might be? So here we're talking about ed tech, okay, and what ed tech is. So it's got some ideas about what ed tech is, and then it starts talking about benefits. But yeah, as Galarm says, it's got pros and cons, and there are different opinions. Okay, many teachers like it because, but some parents think that, and they have a different opinion. Okay. Oh, Ebe, a typhoon. I hope things are safe for you. Stay safe, okay? So this one's talking about EdTech and that it's not clear cut. There's a pro and a con, perhaps, or there's difference of opinion, okay? So that's probably what we're reading about as we go through here, okay? So if we read the second paragraph really quickly, if we look at this one, what is the main idea in this paragraph? What are we mainly talking about here? And because this is a body paragraph, it should have an idea supported by evidence of some description, supporting facts, right? Or supporting information, okay? Okay, so this one is, so Tuifam says why EdTech is important for school children. Was that the first one or the second one, right? But I think this one here says too much EdTech may be harmful to young learners and that it affects student performance, but not in a good way, okay? So what's some of the evidence for that? Okay, we've got a study which talks about grades and screen time, okay? There's more research about physical development, right? There's a belief, okay? Now that's not a fact, that's a belief, okay? Not an opinion, not a fact, excuse me. It's an opinion, okay? And then the OECD is talking about how it doesn't help students acquire skills. Okay, so we've got a few different points here about why this may not be so good. Okay, cool. And then if we look in the third paragraph, we've got a shift. Okay, here it says, in response to this, some parents are sending their children to low-tech schools. Okay, and then it starts describing this. So as we go through a piece of reading like this, we can analyze the different parts of it. Now, why would we do that? What are the two main reasons you think that I want to analyze the reading here as we go through it? If we're analyzing the reading, and I would literally say this to my students as well, what's the purpose of doing this, right? Why am I teaching you to do this? So why would we want to analyze a piece of reading like this? To look at the main idea, the thesis statement, topic sentences, supporting evidence. Why would we talk about those things? What's my purpose as a teacher here? So so what you're saying in the chat box at the moment is about the actual content of the article, but stepping back, what's my purpose in analyzing the reading? What's my purpose? Yeah, exactly, Robert. And Cherry, good. So between the two of you, you've got it. So one purpose is to more clearly understand what is there. But the second one is because this is a model for future writing. So you can see how this person does this and then this. So when you're writing, I want you to do that and then that, right? So it's all reading as a model for future writing, okay? When we learn to write, essentially, we plagiarize, we copy the styles of the things we do, okay? The things that we see, and then we follow through with those, right? Okay, so so that's why we're going to be analyzing the writing. And if we look at the next activity, while I've done that on the screen there where you can see it, the activity on the left-hand side here, and going into other parts as well, is looking at, say, the facts and opinions that are in there, which form the evidence that goes with some of these things. So it's another way to analyze it, talking about facts and opinions. Now, I've got a comment here, which I just add, and this is a personal comment, but let me know what you think about this. Here it says we've got to distinguish between a fact and an opinion, okay? A fact is something that is true and can be proven. An opinion is what someone thinks. But I think in today's world, there is also a third thing. So we have a fact, we have an opinion, and what's something else you may see in reading or in news and video when someone's talking with you. Apart from facts and opinions, what's a third thing we might have? So if I give you an example of a person, so here we go. Will and Kitty are saying fake news, right? Yeah, so it's kind of leading you in that direction. Another one is things that people say are facts, but are actually not true, because here it says a fact is something that is true and can be proven. But sometimes people say things like they are facts. They use the words that indicate it's a fact, but it is neither true nor can it be proven. Okay, disinformation, right? So I think we all know a few people who do this. Politicians in general sometimes do this, a few more than others, but this is the kind of thing we will see that is a lie dressed up as a fact, okay? But then we could talk about the different sorts of language that goes on here. So we could look at this with, as teachers, you already kind of know this, right? But if we look at C here and we just say, okay, which of these are facts and which of these are opinions? Let's do this really quickly. And we can teach our students to look at the words. Now, obviously the article is here, but we don't need to go through it. So if we say here, administrators believe EdTech prepares children for college or work, is that a fact or an opinion? Which one is it? And how do we know? How do we? It's an opinion, yeah. And we know because of that word, believe, right? A belief is not a fact, it's an opinion, okay? Right, next one. A recent study found that the more students spent looking at a screen, the lower their grades were. That is a fact. Now, the question is, okay, we're saying it's a fact. Is this a true fact? Is that, is this statement, the more time students spend looking at a screen, the lower their grades were? Well, that's what the study found, but in research, what we want to do is we want to have a lot more examples or studies that support that same idea, and then it becomes more of an accepted fact. Okay, so depending on the age of your students, when you start talking about facts and opinions and the reinforcement or the support for facts, you may need to get a little bit deeper into that to talk about ideas like disinformation as well. Because you could have a recent study that found this, but you could have 50 other studies that found the exact opposite, in which case this one is probably less likely, right? So we could get into that discussion as well. And you can see we're going to go down and look at the words, right? So this is a fact. Some parents are sending, okay? This is a fact as well, right? But this one here says, but maybe there should be this, because it says maybe, right? That one's an opinion, right? Because maybe we're not quite sure, right? It's not necessarily provable, okay? Cool. So yeah, so this is a different way we can look at some of these ideas about facts and opinions. Okay, now we are running out of time, so I am skipping through here a little bit more quickly. You can see we've got some more activities, Venn diagrams, relating ideas to your own education, reflecting back on your own childhood and looking at things there. This is one of the features of this program, reflecting on your own situation. But what I want to do is jump through. I'm going to skip over the next reading entirely, and we're going to look at writing really, really quickly. Zoom in here a little. So here we've got a model essay, okay? And if I look at the next page, it's actually got an analyze the model, okay? And the students will go through and look at this, right? So they'll look at the hook, they'll look at the thesis statement, the body paragraphs, what's the basic reason why they feel the thesis statement is true and what's their supporting evidence, right? Okay, but if we jump back here, let's see if we can just pick this out by ourselves, right? So again, as we did before, looking at the first paragraph, what's the thesis statement here? In the first paragraph, which is where the thesis statement always is, what is the thesis statement? So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, we've got 5 sentences. So if you want to, you can just tell me which sentence it's in. Okay, Kitty's underlining it for me. Great, Kitty. Yeah, in my view, opinion, okay, getting a college degree is a path to financial success and overall happiness, right? So that is a statement. And now what's your support to back that idea up? Okay, so there's my thesis statement. Nice one, Kitty. Okay, so if we go down a little bit more, just clear that, nice. So if we go down a little bit more and we look at the first paragraph here, I'll just do that. First, all college students has blah, 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 right? So in here, what's the topic sentence of this paragraph? What is the topic sentence of the second paragraph? Usually it's the first one, right? So is this first one the topic sentence? Yeah, in this case it is. A college degree has financial benefits. That's the supposition. What's my support for that supposition, right? Okay, and so then we could say, okay, great, where are our supporting ideas that go along with that, right? So financial benefits, right? College graduates are more likely to find work. Great. Okay, that's one. And salaries for college graduates are usually higher. Okay, great. And then hence they're in a better situation, even though they have large loans to pay off. Okay, so some people might try to counter argue that a college degree doesn't have such good financial benefits because you have large loans. But then this person is counteracting that argument straight away by saying they're in a better financial situation, even with the loans, they're still better off. So they're shooting down that idea straight away. And so these are techniques we can teach our students to put into their writing. Okay. So as we go through and we analyze that, we can look at all the different pieces, which is here, right? And then after that, we learn about paragraphs, but also about a little bit of grammar, okay? Adverb, clause of contrast. And so in this one, we've got a couple of ideas. So while some believe college is a waste of money, I think it's worth the money. Although, blah, 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 I, blah, blah, blah. I never, blah, 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 even though I, blah, blah, blah. So two contrasting ideas, and we set them off with an adverb, okay? So while, although, or even though. So if I jump back to here, if I look at the second paragraph again, okay, where was an adverb of contrast within the second paragraph, within just the second paragraph here? Can you find an adverb of contrast? We've already mentioned it, actually. Even though, great, yeah. So they're better off financial situation, large loans to pay off. Those are two competing ideas, contrasting ideas. We set them off with an adverb of contrast, even though. Okay, great. Okay, and we could look at other ones and see if we can find other ones as well, right? We could see, so here we've got another one. If we look here, although it is possible to blah, 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 comma, you, blah, blah, blah. So the although is another example, and we can teach this through the context of what we've just read, okay? So when, as you can see, if we're teaching our students to counteract an argument, using this adverb of contrast is a good way to do it. And so we could teach them this skill in their writing as well. Okay, great. So last little piece, it's got some grammar examples here. I don't think we need to go through those, but I want to take a look at this one here. It's more practice on adverbs, and then it's got a model here, a short model essay, and it says, okay, do grades matter? Here's an example, okay? But this one's also, it says in here, find and correct the 3 errors in the adverb clauses of contrast. So where can you see some errors in this one? And actually what I'll do is, let me pop it up this way. Here we go. So then we can actually see the different pieces as we're looking through, right? So just scroll down a fraction. So where can we see some errors? Where can we see some errors here? So most of us are used to receiving grades at school. Traditionally, colleges used a 5-point grading system to evaluate students. While the system is familiar, some colleges have started moving to a no-grade system. In my opinion, a system that does not use grades is the right approach to evaluating a student's performance. No-grade schools, da, 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 da. Okay, although, where do we have that one? I'm having to move windows around to find it. Although many students, I see, right, okay. Although many students in traditional colleges may seem happy, period. That's a mistake. It should be a comma and then small s students, right? So that should be 1 here. Although many students, okay, so there's an error in the structure. Should be a comma here, okay. Any others? Can we see any others? In fact, a recent study showed that worrying about grades led students to get psychological help. Not sure. Okay, Kitty's underlined something here. While the system is familiar, some colleges, when I read it the first time, you may have noticed I paused here. There should be a comma, right? Yeah, okay. So let's take a quick look. Let's look at the answers real quick. So here's the 3, right? So if what we should have here is we should have a comma, right? We should have a comma here, okay? And even some competition is good for us. It can cause, yeah, that's wrong. It should be although, right? Yeah, exactly. Good one. Okay. So yeah, we can fix all of that up so we can make sure that we get it all right. Okay, nice. So that's just working through, again, a writing model. but also making sure we've got the grammar down. Okay, and then after that, we get into our writing process. And you can see this is very laid out, like we're already up to step H in a very scaffolded way of doing the writing. So we've got brainstorming here, and then we've got outlining and writing and first draft and revising and editing and final draft. So we're going to go through the whole process of the writing and make sure we get right through to the end. One thing I always like about these programs is sometimes you get teachers who stop here. They let their students write one thing, but then they don't go back and review it and revise it and edit it, right? But we should go through those steps. We should go through the revising step. We should go through the editing step. We should go through making a final draft and actually completing the writing properly, right? It is definitely worth the time for the students to do that kind of thing. Okay. Okay, so I hope that was a little interesting today. It was. I know we were going quite quickly towards the end there, but as you can see here, this is very much a reading and writing focused program. If I run back to the beginning here, we've got drawing an interest on what are we looking at here, understanding our objectives in an academic sense, okay? And then the video draws an interest and it gets us started on the topic. But then after that, we're like vocabulary, reading, post-reading, more vocabulary to get ready for more reading, reading again, post-reading, writing, setting up our grammar to help us with our writing, very scaffolded way of moving through our writing, editing, and so on, and producing something at the end, right? So a very thorough way to work through reading and writing, very scaffolded, very step-by-step with a lot of support along the way, okay? As mentioned, this is a very academic program. You might have noticed today when I was teaching it, I was trying to use more academic words, right? So I was using words like to distinguish between, right? There was a few other words I said at different times, which are not conversational words, right? I'm using those words because they're of an academic form, right? So it could be, let's see, I'm trying to remember some of the things I said as I was going through, right? But it might be, I might say, how do we relate these two things together rather than say, how do we think about these things, right? If we say, how do we think about these things, it's a very open conversational kind of use of the language or the idea. But if I say, how do we relate these ideas to something, that's more of an academic use of a vocabulary word, right? And in that way, we can expose our students to lots of academic vocabulary orally as well. And help them pick up more words along the way. And again, you might reframe and recast that as well. So you might say, for example, how do we relate these ideas together? How do we, compare them with each other, right? So I might restate what I just said in another way so my students understand the words I'm using. Okay, cool. So I hope that was useful today. It was pretty quick and a little bit rapid towards the end, I guess. But Kitty has dropped in a couple of links into the chat box here that you can see about this particular program, which is called Reflect. It is a newer program for us. It's in its first edition, just came out in the last few months, but a very good program, very well structured, very well thought out. I like this kind of program because I'm a very methodical kind of person. It really suits my kind of style to do it in this kind of way. So I hope that's kind of interesting for you. And yeah, and Kitty's also dropped in the webinar site. We do have a lot more webinars coming up. I'll just run through a little bit of housekeeping and then we'll kind of talk about Q&A, right? So tomorrow, I will send you an email to follow up with a recording link and a certificate from today's session. So do check your email tomorrow afternoon for that. I set it up in the morning. It'll come to you about lunchtime. Okay, so look in the afternoon. As Kitty said, we've got quite a few webinars coming up. I will refer to this one, especially this first one, Breaking Through the Screen. And here it says part 2, okay? You may, if you saw last month, Joan and Jared down here did a presentation about a new title called Breaking Through the Screen, about teaching in a more kind of decentralized web environment. If you didn't see part 1, then go to this, our main global webinars page down here, and you can see the recording of their part 1 session, and coming up is their part 2 session coming up next week. Okay, and then Julie and Kitty and Will and myself will be back for more sessions later in the month. Okay, great. Now, finally, before Q&A, if you would like to find out more about this Reflect program or any other way that we could help some of your learners, then actually, let's just do this. Just email me. My email address is there on the screen. You also have it in the webinar emails that invited you to the webinar. My email address is there. So if you want to get in touch with myself or one of your National Geographic Learning representatives close to where you are, so if you're in Thailand or the Philippines and you want to talk to someone there, email me and then you and I can chat and I'll get you in touch with the right person. Okay, so just drop me an email and then we can take it from there. Okay, great. So quick Q&A. I see if you want to ask a question, have a look in the chat box and sorry, in the chat box or in the Q&A box, and I'll answer any questions we have there. Someone in the Q&A box has said, why is it important to teach students to distinguish facts from opinions, right? One reason for that is, well, what would you think is the reason that we want to teach students? Why is it important? One is because sometimes people say things, just really briefly, where someone says it, but that's what they feel, but it's not always true, right? So for example, a financial advisor might say to you something like, I believe the best place to put your money is the stock market. That's not a fact, that's an opinion, right? And if you're going to do something based on what someone tells you or what you read, you want to have an understanding about whether it's a fact or whether it's an opinion, and also whether it's a true fact or whether it's a lie dressed up as a fact, right? So definitely please help your students understand the difference between facts and opinions for that kind of reason, because based on what we read or hear, we will take some sort of action a lot of the time. Facts are safer for taking action, opinions are not. And so you can explain that idea to the students, I think, in good ways, right? So if we said, for example, it's a fact that if you cross the road at the pedestrian crossing, it is safer, okay? Because, for example, cars expect to stop, or there's lights there to help you, right? But it could be like, oh, I think it's okay just to run across the road anywhere you like. That's an opinion, and it's not something you maybe want your students to actually do, right? So you can use some real world examples like that to help them distinguish between the two. Okay, great. Okay, okay, so I hope I answered that one. Okay, any other questions? I was watching the chat box. I didn't see any there. Ruthel, for your question, just drop me an email and we can chat later if you like. Yeah, and Will's, actually, Will, you sent it to hosts and panelists only. Let me drop it in for everybody. There we go. So yeah, you can use my emails in the webinars emails. It's there on the screen. Feel free to just get in touch with me and we can chat and I can get you in touch with the right kind of person. Okay, great. Nice to hear that that was interesting. Cool. No pain, no gain. I like it. Very good. Thanks, Anita. Yeah, so we've got a lot more webinars coming up. We run webinars every week, pretty much, either ourselves in Asia, and by ourselves, I mean myself or Kitty or Will, who are here with me today, or Julie, and all four of us, we all work in the same team here in Asia. And then people like Joan and Jared and some of our other presenters are coming from, say, the United States or Europe, the UK, and they're presenting on ideas that they've researched and other things like that. So definitely come and check Joan and Jared's session next week, Tuesday, because they are professors and they've researched the ideas that they're presenting, and they are facts, they're not opinions. Okay, cool. Okay, Aldila, sorry, has put a question in the chat in the box as well. Some tips on how to teach reading in considerably active classes. Analyzing text sounds boring to some students. Okay, so part of that is knowing your students, I think, right? And in general, I always feel opinion, not fact, opinion. I always feel that you want to tailor your style of activity to the nature of your student. Not every student is going to use every activity the same way. So if we're doing analysis of texts, sometimes I tell my students that that's what we're doing, and they like the detective work of figuring that out. They like to search for the answers. They like to get it right. That's that kind of student. Other students are more play-based, right? They would rather have a kind of a play style of learning. And so I just say, right, we're going to do a puzzle. And now all of a sudden it sounds like a game, right? So sometimes it's about the words you use to sell the idea, I think, right? Other times when you're doing analysis, you don't want to analyze every piece. Maybe you just, if you've got an active class that doesn't like to focus for a long time as a group, you might just do analysis for 1 or 2 minutes and that's it, right? But the way to manage that and make sure the students get lots of practice is do 1 minute there and then 10 minutes later, do 1 more minute there, right? Just don't put all your analysis in a block, right? And if you're doing it in that kind of way for those more active or fidgety classes or less focused classes, then that may be a way to make the students get practice with analysis, even though they don't feel like they're really doing that, right? So a couple of general ideas is maybe either focus it or break it up, depending on, is your class able to focus or not so much? And then the other one is choose your words carefully when you're talking about what you're doing. So some students like the idea of analyzing, others like puzzles, others like, getting things right and wrong, others like doing analysis by discussion. And as soon as you turn it into a discussion with their friend, they like the activity more. So tailor what you do to your class, right? Cool. Rommel, yes, we will have a certificate. It will come to you in your email tomorrow, okay? So look for the email tomorrow. In the afternoon, you'll get it. Okay? Cool. Okay, well, I think that's all. Thank you, everybody. So I hope you enjoyed today. Do follow us on Facebook or on WeChat if you're in China, and keep in touch with us. And yeah, we're looking forward to seeing you again soon. And watch out for that email tomorrow with your recording and your certificate. And do keep in touch, okay? We'll see you again real soon. Thank you.